Hello, my name is Felicity Chun from the Model Evaluation and Diagnostics team. This video is on CMORizing observational data in ESMValTool. So CMOR standards is CF compliant NetCDF files for use in CMIP projects. This is including the data formatting, so units use the dimensions, metadata variables of the data files. So ESMValTool has these data commands to use. So the first one is an auto download. So some data sets will have an auto download function available through ESMValTool, and that's how we can run them. And that'll download the raw files, and then once you've done that you can do the data format, which will format the files into CMORized data sets. So for reference we can have a look at this web page. Switch here. So this is in the ESMValTool documentation under more obtaining input data. I'll give you some links and backgrounds. And here, using a CMORizer script, we'll go through using those data commands. So we've got the data download one here and the data format. So if you scroll down some more, refer here for help on using those commands. But this page also has these available data sets with a CMORizer script. So you can refer here if you're looking for anything. Let's now have a look at running those commands. So what I've got here is an example PBS job that I'll use. So you can see the commands. So the first one, data download, I've got my own config file set up so that I've added some settings and the dataset name at the end. So the output to this data download, you'll find a folder in your output directory, but there'll be nothing in it. There's just this main log text which will tell you it's been downloaded. The input directory is where it's downloaded that data to. So if we have a look at that folder structure, that's of course set in the config file as well, so that's why it's in my own folder. So I could download to it, and we can see here it's got a folder for the tiers, and then within the tiers the data sets, and inside this folder will be the raw files. So we can have a quick look at that. You'll see they're all downloaded in there. So now it's downloaded, let's have a look at the data format, which is used in the same way with the config file and the dataset name, just data format. And if we look at the output for data formatting, it'll have a folder in the output in your output directory as well. It'll have a run so we can see what it's done. And it'll do its fixes and then completed. And inside the tier folder is that tier and then the dataset name, and these are the completed CMORized datasets which we then can copy into our observational folders or add the directory to our config file so we can then use it in recipes. So once we've done that, we've got the CMORized datasets, we can have a look at running a test recipe just to make sure a test recipe can find that data. So that's what this is here. We can have a look at the recipe just quickly. So I've got one preprocessor just to check that it can manipulate that data in whatever way. But you can also just leave that blank as well, or not include it. and then that one data set that we've CMORized, and then just null for the script so it doesn't run any diagnostic, and then we can check that output. So I've kept the preprocessor folder, so we can see here, just have a look at that output as well. And this is where I've used, instead of copying the data set into the observational data for it to find, I've included this directory into my config file for observational data, so I didn't have to copy the data across. It's one way of doing it anyway. So far we have run the data tools and tested the output. We can have a look at how we would add to this and add other data sets and files to CMORize. So to do that, we need to install ESMValTool from source in developer mode. So I won't go into too much detail on this, but you pretty much git clone. We'll have a look at this web page, which is you can refer to for setting up and installing. But yeah, you'd have to install from source, so a git clone of the updated ESMValTool. And when you've set up your environment with it, we can go and install in developer mode. So that way it'll pick up the edits you make to the source folders. So if we go back, the main files we'll be looking at are the formatter script and the CMOR config file. So the two files we need to create, the CMOR config file and the formatter script, we'll be adding those into our cloned environment. That's what I have here. ESMValTool, and you'll find them under CMORizes data. And then we've got CMOR config, the downloaders if there's an auto downloader, and the formatter script is in here. I've got these two open, so you'll see that they're both named as the data set, so that's quite important. So the first file we'll look at is the config file. There's a refresher on the location and the basic info we would have to put in there. So it includes the attributes, what tier and dataset ID, so the name and the variables. So you can have multiple variables in one config file. Let's have a look at our example. Here we can see I've defined a file name, so that's from the raw files that we can pull into our formatter script. I've got the tier here as well, project ID OB6, so that's using the CMIP6 formatting, and therefore the variables will be the CMIP6 names as well. So now having a look at the formatter script, here's the location again, and the main functions we're looking at that we'll use is the CMORization function, and it needs to have these parameters as a call signature, and we'll do our CMORizing in that. And then we've also got a save data function, so it's just pulled from some shared utilities in ESMValTool. So yeah, we'll just import those functions into the script. So if we have a look at our code, switch. So this is the formatter script. We can define our own functions that we'll use. And down the bottom is the CMORization function. So I don't use all of these parameters, but they all have to be there. Part of the config that comes through is the CMOR table, so we'll come back and have a look at that. Otherwise, yeah, it also pulls in that file name from the config, which we've defined here. And that's looking for the file, so then it's calling this extract variable function here, which we've written up here, and this is where it does that data editing. So we're using some utilities from the CMOR, ESMValTool CMOR utilities functions, and you'll see the save variable here. So we can have a look at some of those utility functions. Here is the source in GitHub, but it's also in your downloaded environment. But here you'll be able to see that script and the functions that you have available, including fixed coordinates, save variable, which we would always use, and a few others. The other thing we mentioned was the CMOR table object. It comes through in the config, so this one, because it was defined as ob6, would be using CMIP6 tables, and the MIP we were using was OMON, so it'll be able to find that from the config, and also you'll be able to check that you have the right variables here. We found this one, sea surface temperature, so it can pull in this information, but it'll also need these dimensions as defined. And just note these CMOR tables are stored under the ESMVal core repo, so that'll be reading through there. So just finalizing some other files if we want to finish off our CMORization. So if we switch to code, we'll have a look at these two files. In your directory, we can minimize the two folders where you'd find those files. So this one. And this is the datasets YAML. So this has all the datasets in it for CMORizing. So if you add a new one, we can add also the information here, which includes its tier, source, info. This is in alphabetical order. The other thing that we would need to add is the references. So under references, we've got a bibtext file, and it's named the reference. So we've got our reference here as ERSST v5. We'll be able to find that here. So that needs to be included so it can get referenced in its recipes. So a good resource to use is this tutorial. It'll run through CMORizing and just a bit more information. So if we have a quick look at the page, you'll find it here. Give you an intro, and it'll just run through an exercise of CMORizing a file or a data set. So just a review, in this video we have run the ESMValTool download and formatting commands. We've mentioned you will need to install ESMValTool in developer mode if you want to add new data sets. We talked about the CMOR files that it uses and the location where to find them, and these mainly are the formatter script and the CMOR config file. So as always, reach out through the Hive forum for support and suggestions, and I'll see you next time.